Hello, let's wait a few more minutes until others join us and we'll start. Okay, I guess we can start. Everyone, welcome to today's session. And so first of all, regarding your home tasks, I checked what was sent. Somewhere before the middle of yesterday. So for those who sent later, I will take a look a little bit later, most likely tomorrow. And then I will just simply send the table where I just simply mark if the task is done or not. So I will share it tomorrow, and then in case I missed anything, then after that please let me know. So yeah, that's about the home task. So I guess the first two tasks were not so practical from programming point of view. And the first task, you had to create a group in Git. You had to create your accounts in Git. So that's basically the major setup you had to do to actually start with all the other practical assignments we will have during this course. So that's why you need to use Git. So if you completed this first task, then you should be fine using it, and this will help you in further practical assignments and also your group works you will have. So that's about the home tasks. Regarding the upcoming home tasks, there is the home task until the 2nd of August. That's about the branching. So this is I'll also then check this week, most likely, if you submitted this week. If not then next week. And there will be also the assignment about the arrays. So I will then let you know the due date is at the end of this session. So that's about the practical tasks. In case you have any questions, you can briefly ask me. And then let's move to the plans for today, and I will also mention the plans for Wednesday. So let me check if all the recording is ongoing. Yes, recording is fine. I will also check the microphone for the recording. I guess it should be fine. Okay, so then we can start. So today we are going to continue with the loops. So last time we covered for loop. That's the base loop used in all the programming languages. So basically, if you know the approach, how to use simple for loop, then you can practically use it in all the programming languages. For example, C#, C++, C, JavaScript, Java, PHP, and all such popular languages. In all these languages, for hoop work, it looks the same and it works the same. You will also see that the same for while loop and for do while loop as well. But yeah, so today we will cover then another basically type of loop, which is while loop, and the slight adjustment of a while loop, which is do while loop. After that, we'll do one practical task together, and then on the remaining part of the session we will start a presentation about the strings. And yeah, so let's see how it goes for us today. Most likely we'll cover something from strings topic on Wednesday, but what I want to do on Wednesday, so before we start today, there, as you may see, there is such assignment with star, so that's not mandatory for you, but that's related to the sorting algorithms, so that's quite theoretical assignment, I would say. And so just from my point of view, this may be quite useful if we talk about the algorithms, if we talk about the efficiency of the algorithms. And there will be also one more presentation about the algorithms, and for this presentation I would like to have a separate session, so I'm approaching to have it on most likely on Wednesday. So then we will have a presentation about the algorithms, and this task will also be included as the part of the task about the algorithms. So, but that will be more theoretical task, but quite useful for programming point of view. Okay, so there's the question from Accessory: what do I have to type in the code to skip a line? Yeah, you can use /n. So when you use /n, then on opposite direction. So please note that this is, if you select this slash, it's not the same as this one. One of them was called backslash, but to be honest, I'm always mixing up them, so just so I guess you know. So that's from left to right, that's the new line. So every time you put it to text, this is new line. When we talk about the strings, you also see that we have such thing like verbatim. This means that this will not cover the escape characters, but that will be the topic about the strings. Yeah, if you want to go to the new line, then you can simply use /n. Then you can go to new line. I guess that's also the same for most of the popular programming languages. It's quite a popular thing. Okay, so then we can start maybe a small recap on the previous session. As you remember, we talked about for loops, and this is the base for the loops, and basically what the loops are. The loops means that we repeat, but the code, our code repeats the actions. So basically it's the same code repeated multiple times. During this code there are the variables, of course. The variables may change, and that is how we basically use the loops. For the loop syntax, that's the block, the same as we have if block. So we have the start of if block, we have the end of if block. So that means that this is the section of the code, the part of the code to be executed using the specific conditions, like if. So we have else, then if, then we have this condition. Only if this condition is true, then this code is triggered. Otherwise, this code will be triggered. So we do the kind of branching. We control which part of the code to be executed. So we then control the block of codes. The same is for loop. For the cycles, we create the code which also applies the control on the code, and then it shows us not shows us, but it repeats the block of code. So we have for loop, then it has the block under which it is assigned, and then so then the for loop to be applied to the block inside. And then we have the parameters of for loop. There are 3 parameters, and first parameter is the initialization of the variable, so this will be the variable used only inside the loop. So this I variable will not be used outside the loop. In this case, we just simply declare the variable and we initialize it. We can initialize it as we want, so that's up to us. The same as we initialize the variable everywhere, but so here the thing is that it is used only exactly for this loop and nowhere outside. Of course, if we can have inner loops, and then this variable we define here, as we know, it will be visible for all the code which is inside this for box, so it means that this I will be available everywhere here. Then there's the second one, that's the actual condition which shows us if the iteration of the code should or should not be triggered. That's the simple statement which returns true or false. So then it means that if it's true, then the iteration is triggered. If this is false, then iteration is not triggered, and then we don't execute this code anymore. We go at the part of the code which is out after this cycle. So then this condition is checked, and once this is checked, if this is true, then the code inside is executed. So then it's executed, the last line of the code is executed, then it goes here and does the action here. Usually you'll see that this is I++ action. It can also be something else like I-. We can multiply it, we can divide it, we can see some kind of module, do some kind of module operations, basically whatever we want here. So the key point is that this is triggered after each iteration. So then after this is triggered, we go back to the start. Not back to the start, we go to the check operation, so this part of code will not be triggered anymore, so it's triggered only once we start the loop. Then from here it goes again here, checks, if condition is true, we execute the block of code, then we again go here, and basically we repeat the same steps. If this is false, then as we see at the first iteration, we go after this part of code, and that's it for the loop. So that's the idea for loop. So in case you have some concerns that you don't really understand how for loop works, or if you basically don't understand something from here, so it would be quite important to let me know, because this is quite important thing for all the algorithms we will write in future, not only the algorithms, all the programs to be built in all the environments in programming. So that's why for loops are very important to understand. Also ifs are important. The arrays, I would say, we will see that instead of arrays we can also use the collections, and they work a little bit, from the usage point of view, they work a little bit differently from how the arrays work. But so the for loops and ifs are actually the base. That should be then known after that. So and the last thing, of course, we can also have inner for loops, then that's basically the same. So if we have part of code here, then it can be any code whatever we want. It can be switch, it can be if, it can be for, just no restrictions on the code here. And then we can have another loop with another block of code. In programming there are no limits on inner blocks, inner codes, inner fors, inner ifs, and so on. Alright, so that was the recap from the previous session. In case you have any questions, please let me know. If not, we will move forward with the next type of cycle, which some of you I seen already used in the practical assignments. That is while loop. Yeah, also quite popular type of loop. Basically, we have two such types. Again, that's what we've seen before. That's for loop, and while loop is also, I would say, they have similar popularity of using in programming. Yeah, so how can we actually imagine while loop? So previously we had this simple for loop, and in for loop, in fact, we had this algorithm related to the alarm, which is ringing, let's say, every day, and in fact, this algorithm would be more precise for while block. Why it's not the best approach to use for loop in such case, because so here's for each, then delete it. Be more precise. So what we can see here we don't have any, let's say, I variable. So we do not count anything. For loops are mostly needed if we have something to not really count, but we can say count or go through some fixed from programming point of view, from program point of view, fixed number of steps. So like we say that please go 10 times, then that's for loop. But in this case we see that we don't have really exact number of iterations for how many times we need to delay our wake up. So this in theory may happen endlessly, and there is no number of steps. Code is repeated, but we don't know how many times this will be repeated. So in this case, of course, it's possible to write such code using for loop. But the need of for loop is, as I just said, is mostly needed for the fixed number of steps, which are known before we actually start the loop. In this case, we don't know such number. But again, it's possible to also write such algorithm using for loop, but from programming point of view, this maybe won't be as correct. As you will see, we can do it with while loop. So for example, while loop is decided. So for example, we have the condition time is less than 23. So again, in this case, the condition also has to be true or false, same as for loop. But for loop, we actually have, as you remember, free section. So the initialization and the operation to be done after each loop. For while we have only one condition, and it means that the loop is repeated. Until the condition is false, until it turns false. So while it is true, then it is executing. This is why actually is called while loop because it is executing while condition is true. So then let's take a quick look. So the question to you. So how do you think? How many times this loop will be repeated if we don't use break or return statement inside this while loop? Or in case, yeah, that's correct. Telling that's infinite. Excuse me. But for any loop, actually, you'll see in future we have. In fact, we have. I guess it's just quickly remember 3 exceptions. 3 exceptions when endless loops can be stopped. So the first one is that we simply use break statement. A break statement finishes all the possible loops inside. So if we are inside the loop, we can use break statement. Then we go out of the loop. That's the first case. Second case is return statement. We can always call return statement if we call it from main method. This means that return statement simply stops our program, because again, what return means? Return means that we go out of the function of the method we are currently in. Yeah. So in this case, we are inside static void main. So it means that if we press but the program triggers return statement. Yeah. So this one. So it means that we go out of this method. But since this is our starter method where our program is executed, then it means that we simply finish our program. But, so in fact, this will stop endless loop, obviously, because if the program stops, then the loop stops as well. Also, yeah, if we are inside another function, if we define another function and we call it, then inside this function there is return statement, then it will simply mean that you go out of that function. But since that function is called from, let's say, from main method, then your code simply continues. You just go out of that exact function. So that's the second point. And the third point is that's exception. Yeah, so there may be the exception triggered. So in simple words, before we start talking about exceptions, we can consider this as some kind of error. Yeah, so if there is, for example, incorrect input or just any other errors, then there will be the exception, and the exception will also close the loop if there is no exact catch statement. But this will be talked a little bit later. Just for now, to mention that if we say endless loop, it does not really mean exactly that it will in theory go forever. And so there are 3 possible cases when the infinite loop can be stopped. I mean, maybe there are more cases, just to remember exactly at this second 3. So I guess that's it. If there are more, then I will let you know. But yeah, so normally there should be 3 cases. Yeah. So then let's take a quick look on. So there's the code. So just to not confuse you, I will take the code. Yeah. So in fact, we can create the same type of loops using while and using for loops. So yeah, in theory, that's possible. In theory, these two loops can be equivalent. And yeah, from this point, again, at first that's maybe a little bit confusing to actually understand when to use for loop and where to use while loop. In fact, I mean, at the beginning you can select the best option for you. That's I mean, at the beginning that's fine, and also in practice sometimes you are free to select one or another option, but on practice, for loops again are used if you have some kind of fixed number of iterations. Like in this case, we have the length of the array, and of course, this is from a programming point of view is null, so there are exact number of steps to be done, exact number of iterations to be executed, and in this case, for loop is preferable. Comparing to while loop, of course, it can also be executed the same way, but a while loop is needed for some unknown conditions. Again, let's say the most, not the most, but one of the obvious cases for while loop would be, let's have a quick look on the calculator, for example. We have this calculator example, and so as you remember, we had this check on incorrect input. So at this point, we just simply had the option, not the option, we didn't have any option as the users to repeat the input. Yeah, so we just only said to the user that your input is incorrect and the program is stopped. But what we can actually do, we can use let's say while loop, and while loop will allow us to implement the logic where the user can try to repeat the input until it is correct. Yeah. So how can we actually then proceed in this case? So we can say there are different options. For example, the most simple would be that we define boolean value. Let's say input incorrect, or maybe input correct. So then we can say that's false, or by default it will also be false. And then we can say while not input is correct, then we can try to repeat this section of code. And in this case, we should proceed in the opposite direction. So that would be that if the parsing is correct, then we can say that if the parsing is correct, we can say that the input is correct. Else, so if the parsing is not correct, we can print the error and the loop will continue. So that is how we usually can check the input. Okay, so again, we define the variable, which will be our flag, which says if the input is correct or it is not correct. It shows me the error. Here it seems that it's not. Oh yeah, it's not defined. Hold on. Oh yeah, I guess we can maybe try this. Say 0. Yeah, so in this case, compiler does not really understand that the value will actually be assigned, but so in this case we can escape it this way. So sometimes compiler will ask you to initialize the variables, and in this case, we as the programmers, we know that it will be the variable will be assigned. The same for this one. We'll make it a little bit later. But the compiler is not so smart to actually understand this point, so it says us that the variable should be assigned. So in theory, we can do something like this, simply initialize them with zeros. So yeah, in this case, we define this boolean variable. We say that that's false, and we simply say while the input is incorrect, this part of code will be triggered. Okay. So in this case, if input is correct, then the value is assigned here. The input turns to true, then it goes to the next iteration. It sees that it is true, then it is not true. That means that this is false. So if this is false, then the iteration is not executed. It goes to the next part of code. So the same we can do here with the next step. In this case, I can maybe use the same variable, or you can define new variable. That's up to you. So I reinitialize the flag variable, and then I do the same thing. I use while input is incorrect. Oh, no, hold on. The ball is here. And then I can do the same thing. So then I say if the parsing is done successfully, then say that input is correct. Else we print the error and continue iterating here again. So in case input is not correct, so parsing is false, yeah, it returns false. It means that parsing is not successful. Then we are under else statement. We print the error message, and it goes again back here. Input correct is false, then it means that not true or not false, that's returns true. So then this part of code is still to be executed. Yeah, so in this case, then we can do absolutely the same also here. So again, I will use the same variable, and then I proceed with the same part of code. And then I say if validate operator is correct, so the operator is validated, then input correct is true, else it is false, then I will print the error message. Yeah, so the same here. But yeah, at this point this should not be executed, and I guess that we are fine now with the program. So I can finish the directory and can run the program. Okay, so let's check how it works. So I put something incorrect. Oh yeah, and one more thing, it asks me also to, yeah, in this case I will enter the value and this will be fine. I forgot to ask user to make the input again. So in this case we should also include the ask to the user inside the loop, because otherwise it will not be printed out on the second and further iterations. So in this case I need to put it inside the loop, because otherwise it will not be printed again, right? So then same here, and the same for the operator. So let's then do it this way and run the code again. Okay, and let's run the code. Okay, let's say that type something which is not correct. I can type again, it says me the same. So once I type the correct value, and after that I can then try the same for the second value, that again shows me the error, so the operation to be repeated. I can try again. Again, it asks me to re-enter, and then I can enter the correct value. We go next, and when happens at this point, so where are we? At this point, I guess. Yeah, so the operation, sorry, yeah, this one is also forgotten. Sorry, and yeah, so in this case, we cannot proceed this way, because if we declare the variable inside this this block, inside this while block, it won't be visible from outside the block. So in this case, we should declare it before the block, and then we can initialize it inside the block. And there will be one problem, that it will not understand that the operator is initialized. So in this case, we can initialize it as empty character as an option, but we are still sure that this so that is space character, but we are still sure that this variable will be assigned here, because otherwise the loop will be repeated. Okay, but let's then try again. Actually, can do it more accurate. So we calculator. That's the folder, and then we run the program. So let's then enter the variables, the values here. So here we can enter the operation. I forgot to close the brackets, but that's not a huge problem. So let's say I type something incorrect, and yeah, in this case there is one more thing, and this is the exception on the thing that there is one character. So at this point, let's assume that we entered one character. Later on we'll talk about the exceptions, and we will also see how to handle such exception. So in this case, let's maybe enter only one character, but later on when we talk about the exceptions, in theory we can also check it maybe right now, but let's first maybe talk about the strings in general, and after that we can also check how we can handle such exception. Yeah, so at this point, if we enter one character and it's not one of the operations, then you see that the input is incorrect, and the program allows us to retry it again. So we retry that, and now everything works as expected. Okay, so that's how we can proceed in such case. So do you have any questions about these examples? Just about this one example. So Okay, so then if it's clear, or maybe if it's not clear, then please let me know. Can explain better. Can explain more. Yeah, but the key point is the sequence. The sequence of the operation. So first of all, we start with while in this case. While simply checks the condition true. So if true, then I go next. If false, then I do not go inside the loop. I just go outside the loop. Okay, the question for Anastasia, yeah, validate operator, as in this case, as you can see, just simply reuse the program we created before. So as you remember, we talked about the functions, and this is basically the function we created that time. So that's not the new program, that's the program we used before, and that's validate operator, the function we created here. So that's just the function we created before. I just simply adjusted the program to also allow users to repeat their repeat their value entering in case they missed something or just accidentally made a typo. So in this case we can use input validation. And so just just for those who like to take a better look on the code, then I will push the changes now to the repository, so you can explore this code if you want. So then I push this code. Just simply mark it as the first part. And so if you want, you can okay, so input typo origin master. Okay, and we didn't, and yeah, the push just to see from SSC, and we didn't need to initialize the operator provided used here. That's the good question. Let's see from where it comes from. No, we initialized it here. So here we initialize it. Yeah, that's a good question. We initialize it, and that's mandatory. In fact, we initialize it here, but yeah, the program is not really. In this case, yeah. So for exactly for this function, we don't need to initialize it. In addition, because it initialized here. Yeah. So if we don't initialize it from here, then only this part will be complaining, because this part here we already initialize it. This part will definitely initialize it because we have two operations in a row. This will be clear for compiler, so here we don't need to initialize it additional because it is here. Question from no, not the operation, but the operator provided. But yeah, so here it is, this operator. Here it is. We provide it from here. We pass this variable with this variable. We pass it to this method. So this is now the operator provided. It comes from here. We pass the value from here. The value goes to here. Yeah, from here the value goes here. From this, so this variable it goes here. Then the value from this variable it goes to this function. It is taken by this operator provided, so it is initialized because it comes from this variable. Yeah. The value is taken from here, it goes to this variable. Then, yeah, the question for the program may be if this variable is initialized, and it is definitely initialized because we have this assignment here. At this point, it will definitely be initialized, and then it goes to the operator validated. Yeah, so here we pass the value. Yeah, so this is the function which has one parameter. which expects the value to be provided. Here we have character value, so it expects the character value to be provided. That's why here we have this character value. It is definitely again initialized, because this will always initialize it. Then the value of the variable is passed to this function, so the value then is passed here, and then it is used here. Yeah. In this case, it is not passed by reference, so it means, again, from technical point of view, that here we have a new variable, and this variable is actually initialized. That's what you're asking us to see. This variable is initialized from here. If we used reference variable, so then in this case it will also work the same way, but in fact yeah, this is initialized from this method passing passed value here, the variable here, then the value is received, and it is then actually used inside this validate operator function method. Okay. Is it more clear, or still something is not clear? No, I mean the variable passing is quite simple. Yeah. So again, we have the function. Under each function, each method, and that's the same. The synonyms. Each method may have no parameters as an option, or it may have one or more parameters. Yeah, so in case it has any parameters, so let's say that it has one parameter, so it is then defined. If we have one parameter, then it is passed by value, so in fact this is considered as new variable. Yeah. So here we have, from technical point of view, when we use this program, then this is a new variable defined exactly for this this function. Yeah. So that's one exact variable defined. And the same way we can define the variables there, that's fine. But the thing is that for the parameters provided from here, for the variables defined here, we can pass the values when we call the method. And so when this method is called, we pass the value of this variable. Okay. Again, there are two things. Yeah, we can, I mean, just in general, not exactly about this case, but in general, we can pass the values of the variables, and we can pass the whole variable. So that's the same as if you pass the, let's say that you have one candy inside the box, and if you pass the candy itself, or you pass the whole box with this one candy. Or let's say you pass, or let's say you have chocolate, a bar of chocolate. So that's exactly the same. You can pass the chocolate, or you can pass the chocolate, which is actually not, the box of one with this one chocolate. Yeah. So which is not opened. Yeah. So that's the same. In this case, you just pass the whole chocolate which is not opened. Yeah. So that is inside both box, for example. But then if you pass by reference, then you just simply pass the chocolate without any package, without any packing. Okay? So you can pass the packed chocolate, or you can pass unpacked chocolate. In this case, you just simply pass the unpacked chocolate, so that's the value of this actual chocolate. If you have the packed chocolate, then it means that you have the package where it is located, and the chocolate, that's the content of this package. The same is here. If you have the variable, that's the actual package for the chocolate without the value. But then you can assign the value, which is actually the chocolate. So that's the variable with the value. Yeah. And in this case it is passed by value, and what it means that so in this case we actually provide the chocolate which is packed, yeah, then it actually passes. We pass the variable. It means that we pass the packed chocolate, but in fact then we actually unpack this chocolate, and then we pass simply chocolate without the packing. Then this chocolate is received here, then it is packed inside this new variable and inside this new package, and then it is used from here. Yeah, so that's if we don't use pass by reference. In case we pass by reference, it means that we actually pass the raw chocolate with the package. Yeah, so that means that we pass the packed chocolate. So that's actually the difference if we pass the chocolate with package or without the package. So if we pass it with package, that means that we pass it by reference. If we pass it without the package, it means that we only pass the value of this package, which is actually the chocolate what we can eat. And in this case, if we don't pass by reference, then we simply pass from one package, we pass the chocolate from one package to another package. And the question is in which case we need to pass by value, and in which case the raw variable. Pass by reference means that there's no difference if you do pass by reference or pass by value for the objects. We'll talk about the object-oriented programming a little bit later. Because so again, if we talk about the complicated variables, then there is, to complicated the objects. This would be the the objects. Yeah, we'll talk about them a little bit later. Or the strings, the strings. But actually, about the strings we'll talk a little bit later. Separately. But if we talk about the objects, so we talk about the arrays, later on we'll talk about the classes, and basically any not primitive types, which are not booleans, which are not integers, which are not doubles, which are not characters. For such primitive simple types, like again integer, booleans, float, there is difference. If we talk about more complicated data types, like again the arrays, the collections, any other objects, then in this case there is no difference, and you'll see later why. But for the primitive types, for the simple types, the difference is that in case you pass the parameter to the method and you expect this parameter to be changed inside this method, then we use pass by reference. If we simply pass the value without any changing, then it is pass without the reference. So again, from the chocolate point of view, pass by reference, again, as I said, this means that you pass the chocolate, and in theory you expect that actually, from a chocolate perspective, you can also consider the way that you pass the chocolate and to the method, and then this chocolate is used inside the method. So this would be passed by reference. On another point of view, if we create the copy of the exact copy of this chocolate and we pass it to the method, so it means that again you have let me quickly draw it. So I can take okay, that should be fine. So if you pass by reference, so let's say you have just any variable like character, like integer, like boolean, like just any character, then if you pass by, so let's say that you pass by value, So then let's say that here we have this function, here we have this method. Okay, so that's the function. So let's say that this is the function. So you pass the variable. Yeah, so that's the variable. You can say variable. Then in this case, if we pass by, not by reference, but we pass by value, then it means that that this method takes the exact copy. Okay, so this means that this takes it creates the copy of this variable. So then we say that the copy, exact copy, I would say, exact copy of the variable is created and used by function. Yeah. So that's what it means if we don't pass by reference. Then from the technical point of view, when we pass this variable, then the variable itself is not used. There's the copy of this variable created. Yeah, the value is copied, so in fact this will be absolutely the same variable which is used by this method. So it means that if we apply any changes on this variable inside this method, then it will not affect this variable. Yeah? So this variable is just simply from where this variable is copied, which is then used by the method. If we then do the same by reference, so let's say that in this case we pass by reference. So that's again the variable. Then the variable. So in this case we pass by reference. Pass by reference. In this case, no new variable is created. Then no new variable is created. Okay. So, and in fact, exactly the same variable is used by the method. Yeah, so in this case we can say that this variable is used, in this case exactly the same variable is used by the method. So that's the difference. So what does mean? It means that if we apply any changes on the variable in this case, then this variable is not affected. Yeah, this value is not affected in any way. But if we pass by reference, then if we apply any changes on this variable, which is then passed here, then this will also affect this variable. So when it is needed, it may be needed in case you actually want to make any changes on this variable. Yeah. So if your function is needed to apply any changes on one exact variable, then you can simply use this method. So yeah, for example, that would be that you have the method. So let's say public static void, say increment. Yeah, so then I can pass the variable here, and then I can pass it by reference. So then I simply increment the variable, or I can do it then this way. Yeah. So in this case, I apply the changes on the variable, and when I call this method, I pass this variable, then the changes will then be applied to this variable, it will be incremented. Yeah, but if I do it by simply this way, then nothing will be changed. Then, yeah. So I can say in this case the variable passed to the method will not be changed. Yeah, so if it's not reference, again, if we use arrays will be changed, and again, we will talk about it when we talk about object-oriented programming, because pass by reference is not really needed to the objects. Yeah, what are the objects? We will talk a little bit later. But yeah, so in this case, variable passed will not be changed. If we then do the same using reference, then in this case, the variable passed to the method will be changed. So, and that's basically the only difference. Then maybe I can also copy paste this image. So then I guess that's can be more clear for you. Okay, maybe let's have then a 10 minutes break, and then after the break we will finish talking about loop, while loop, and we'll also take a quick look on the do while loop. Okay, for now let's have 10 minutes break. In case you have any questions, please let me know. Okay, let's continue. And yeah, so by the way, I just found one really nice picture that can actually help you to understand the difference between pass by value and pass by reference. I'm not sure how can I will then pass the link in our chat, and we can actually see the difference between pass by value and pass by reference. So yes, that's pretty nice illustration to understand. Right? So you have the variable, in both cases you have the variable cup, then you have the method fill cup, then one of the methods, this one is in this method the variable is passed by reference, and inside this method the variable is passed by value. Yeah, so in this case you can see that if we fill the cup of coffee inside this method, then also this cup of coffee is filled, but here only the cup of coffee that is inside the method, this variable, only it is then filled. And in this case you can also see that the copy, or no, in this case you can see that the copy of the cup is created, but in this case there is such illustration that it only shows that does exactly the same cup is passed. And that's why it's called pass by reference. It means that we do not pass the value. So in this case we pass the value is actually the copy. But in this case we pass the reference, which is actually the reference, the link to this exact variable. So in fact we don't pass the value, we pass the reference of the variable. That's why it's called pass by reference. So I hope that now it's more clear for you. And okay, we can then continue with while loop. Yeah, so for while loop, I guess there is no much more to talk about. Again, we have the condition. Condition should be true or false. and yeah, so the block is executed while condition is true. Otherwise, if it's false, then we skip the block. Yeah, so that would be the possible option we usually use. We have the boolean, which is true or false by default. Then we take the opposite of false, or we can take the true. And the block is executed once this boolean, until this boolean variable is changed to the opposite, then the block is not executed anymore. So again, as I said, one more option would be that you use break statement. This means that you break the the loop and go out. Yeah, that. So just as an option, we can use this approach. Let's say here. Let's say here we can use such approach of of break. Okay, so maybe copy the code and then I can execute endless loop. This will be while true, and here instead of changing the boolean variable, I will simply call the method. No, the method simply use the operator break. Yeah? So this will work exactly the same way. So means stop the loop. So that will be the same. We can run. So we need to call this folder, and then we say .NET run. So this would be a equivalent approach. We go to the endless loop, but we finish this endless loop once the operator is valid. So we pass some value here. So let's say that the operator is incorrect. Yeah, the operator is incorrect. Oh yeah, so that is incorrect. And then I say that the operator is false. That should be correct, and everything should be fine after that. Yeah. So that's the equivalent approach using break. Why? When to use break? When to use the flag variable? Actually, that's up to you. Again, you can use any direction of the code you want to use. There is no restrictions, no exact direct rules what to use. That's up to you. What you think is better, what is more comfortable for you, what you think looks better, you can apply this approach. Yeah. Because just maybe for this approach that may look a little bit scary, a little bit scary because we directly say that this is endless loop, but in fact the approach using here is absolutely the same as if we use the approach using boolean variable. So that is absolutely the same in this case. Okay. Yeah, so that's the while true is infinite. You can escape it using break. That is what is mentioned here. And yeah, so also please be sure that you don't make any logical mistake, because otherwise you may end up in the endless loop. So be careful, and that is the say not the usual, but the most significant, I won't say disadvantage, but most significant thing, property of while loop, that it may end up in the endless loop. So please be careful then when you use while loop. Because for for loop, if you have the cycle, then yeah, for for loop again we have the we have the movement. I would say the movement, the changes, the incrementing of the variable defined on the top. Yes, in this case, of course we can also use I++ somewhere here, and also increment I and change I somewhere inside the code. That is also possible, but normally the approach is that only here we do any changes with the control, let's say control variable. So, but for while we must do we must apply the control of the loop inside the block, and of course if the logic is more complicated than we see here, so there can be tens of lines of code, then in such case or even let's say hundreds lines of code, but some complicated code maybe here, and in this case it's not really good if there is a mistake somewhere there, and then your code goes to the infinite loop. And that may be the problem. And then the last type of the loop, maybe not the most popular, especially from my experience, but also possible, is do-while loop. Practically, do-while loop is absolutely the same as while loop, with one exception. So if we use while, then we start with the condition which should be true to go inside the loop. Otherwise, if the condition is false by default, then we don't go inside the loop. Yeah. So, but comparing to while loop, in while loop we can always start without any check on the condition. So do while loop simply executes at least the first operation without any checking on the condition. So that's the difference actually. No more difference, just simply that the first iteration is not checked on true or false, it will always be executed. And let's apply maybe this approach to one of these three checks we have here. Let's maybe do it here. Let's maybe do it here so we can use do. So under do we do not have any condition. Then it means that we should apply the do logic here, and for do we must use while. And in this case we'll say that while input is not correct. So in this case this will work this way. So again, here we don't have any check, so don't have any logical check. So the block of code will always be executed. So yeah, that's actually the only difference. And in this case, so it will execute the first operation in the first iteration. So this part of code will be executed. Then it will check while condition. So again, that's just like we speak. We say while it is let's say what it is work day and work. And so that would be while cycle. We check the condition, is it still working day? We work. And we check again, is it still working day? Yes, we work. For do, we do the first iteration of work, then we only after the first iteration is done, we then check if it is working day. So that is how it will always work there. So the only difference is the first iteration. All the other iterations will be the same. Yeah, so that's the difference. And yeah, so here we have the summary of the branching, the functions, and the loops. So again, let's take a quick look. Just when we have simple code, we have so-called normal flow. It means that we start at some point, we finish at some point without any breaking, without any going left to right side or somewhere else. Okay, we just simply have the list of commands, they are executed, and then once they are executed, then the program code is finished. Then the second option is that we use the function. It means that we have again the same flow, but somewhere at some point or at some points of the program we may have the function calls which will actually call the code which is stored outside of our normal flow. So it means that it is another part of flow, another part of code stored somewhere outside our normal flow. So it can be the same class, it can also be the other class, and then this part of code is executed. So it can have the return, it can be without any returning type, it can accept the variables, it can by values, it can accept the variables by references, so that's up to the definition of the function. And so once then the function call is finished and the function execution is over, then we go back to our normal flow, and then we continue our code. So that's about the function usage. Then we have the branching. So, and here you know that we can have normal flow, that at some point we have the code, the parts of code which can be executed, and we can also, the logic can also skip them based on some conditions. And so that's why we use the if condition to check if the corresponding block should or should not be executed. And after that we go one or another way. But in this case it will be more precise that we say that we the result, and finally we go back to our normal flow. That would also be correct, same as for function, we go one or another way, but at the end we return to our normal flow. Then the last one what we talked about is the loops. So the loops means that again we have a normal flow, then at some point we reach the block of code which in fact it can also be skipped. So if the checking condition is false by default, like again if we have while loop, inside while loop we have checking condition which should be true to execute the loop. If it is false, then it will never be executed. So in this case, in theory, such block can also be skipped, but if it's not skipped, then how it usually works, then this part of code is repeated, and that's it. So until some condition or while some condition. And of course we can mix all these tools. We can make inner tools, like inside function we can create the loop, we can create if, we can create if inside loop, we can create loop inside if statement, we can create no, we can't create function inside ifs. Yes, that is possible, but this is not what we normally do. So that's not the normal flow. There can be again loop inside function, if inside function, loop under if under loop, and so on. So we can do any mixing, but normally what we don't really do is that we don't declare that we don't declare the function, but the function can be called also from if, it can be called also from loops, and so on. Just stop thinking about the declaration of them. The call of function of course can be done from under the branching cases, or also for switch cases. We can also apply any logic what we want to do there. There's no actual restrictions. So that's about the tools. In case you have any questions, please let me know. So then we go to the conclusions. First of all, we presented the concepts of data types, variables, literals, functions, arrays, if, else, switch, and loops. So basically what we say here, these are the, as I already mentioned, the basics of programming. I would say maybe arrays, yeah, from my point of view, nowadays we, and maybe also in our, maybe, but most likely in our course, we'll mostly use the collections, and to get some practice, you most likely will also use more the collections, but the arrays are they are the base, of course, they are the base, and this is the base also for all the collections. That's why yeah, we can also consider the arrays as the must-have base for the programming. But actually, yeah, so these concepts are presented in almost every programming language. So in case you know, in case you understand these components, then you already know the whole basics of the programming, and all the other things you learn are, say, more language specific, more platform specific, more in some case more advanced level, I would say, but maybe more yeah, in some case you can also call it, some point of view, we can also call it more advanced level. But if you know all these things, then you already know the base, the base for the programming. Again, that's the syntax. Yeah, the syntax, the way these elements work, that is what you should know. In case you have any issues with one of these concepts, then please let me know. I will try to help you. And yeah, so now you have all the most important instruments to go and build up the ultimate C# project. And so actually from this point you can also start in other fields as well. So I mean, with these basics, it's easy to jump to any other language. But yeah, that is this thing. So again, any questions, please let me know. And for now we can complete the first task. First task for the arrays. Again, the fourth task will be the most likely we'll talk about it on Wednesday, because that's more theory. So maybe we'll jump to it during the next session. And right now let's take the first one. So the first one is quite simple. So I guess do I have the folder for the arrays? Or not for the arrays, for the assignments? Let me check. No, okay, then we can create it here. So that would be arrays, say 1. Okay, then I can press rename. I can do Ctrl C, Ctrl V here. Oh yeah, of course, need to be run because I'm under calculator folder. So I can do that again. Close this terminal. Yeah, I can actually open multiple terminals if you want. So, and I I can create a new project, template project. Okay, so here I am, and okay, like a big pass program. At this point, that's not so important for us. And so let's implement the task. Right, the program where our elements will be printed out. So here we can, as we did something similar. I'm not sure why there is for each loop. I'm not sure why there's. Oh, hold on. Oh yeah. Yeah, there is one more thing we can use for each loop. Yeah, I did not say it to you, but we can actually also try. That's mostly taken from PHP language, and it's quite, the syntax for each is quite familiar for those who write PHP code. So then we will, let's maybe do it in several ways and then see how it works. But yeah, so that's one additional way. So let's maybe first we start using for loop. So yeah, first we need to declare the elements of the array. So that would be inside my array. I can hard code these elements. And yeah, so one more thing what we'll implement here. So once we finish with this assignment, we'll also see how we can enter the elements without providing the number of the elements. So we will write the numbers, until we basically don't write the numbers, then the program will understand how many elements there are inside the array, and after that we can actually work with this array. But yeah, so let's maybe do it. So then let's start with the simple definition. So let's print the array using for loop. And so we know how to do it. That is quite simple. That's the code we can actually write without seeing what we write here. So we check the condition while I is twice the length, and then we implement for each element. So that will be console. We write the corresponding element of the array. And one more thing, we can write the space after that. So that would be simple. We run the program and all the elements should be printed now. So that is quite simple, nothing special. Then we have for each, and this is the type of the loop I did not talk about, but we can also use it. Oh, I can keep this line of code at this point, and here we have for each. So we have for each, and then we have this for I in my array. And in this case, oh, sorry, not array, but I can say this is the element. This is the element, just to not confuse you. And here we have .NET. Yeah, in this case it works the same. So maybe just before we continue, shortly to explain the syntax of for each. Again, from history point of view, I'm not really sure, but I guess that comes from PHP, because for PHP this is the main way of looping through the arrays. Why? Because in C# there's the fixed number of the elements in the array, but in PHP it is not fixed. There you can add more elements to the array as you want. And also, yeah, for PHP, one interesting thing is that so here we can access the arrays by index. So we know that all the elements are indexed. So this is the element indexed at position 0, this one at position 1, at position 2, and so on. In PHP, there is by default there is no indexes. There are the keys. So in fact, you have the keys and you have the values, and that's why for PHP there mostly we write in PHP we use for each, because in this case, as you can see, for each loop we don't need to provide the index of the element. Okay, so in this case we just simply go through all the elements, and yeah, that is the thing what is quite important from PHP syntax point of view, because again in PHP there is by default no indexes for the elements of the arrays. There are only the keys, and if we want to go through them, then again in PHP we cannot use them indexes, and that's why there is such type of loop created. And in fact, yeah, in C# you can also use this type of loop. So that is also fine. Yeah, and in fact, yeah, for the arrays, basically for the arrays, this is maybe the easiest approach to use. Yeah, that's up to you. Yeah, so in this case, again, the syntax is quite simple. We have for each, and then we have, again, we declare the variable, but in this case we do not declare this variable just simply to index the element, but just to declare the corresponding element of the array. So basically it will go through all the elements of the array. So here's this array, and it will basically take for each element, it will take this element, the value of the element, and pass it here. Yeah, so just by the sequence. And yeah, then we have in, which means that we will read the corresponding array. So there's the array, and we can then use this element. Yeah, so basically during each iteration it will take one element, and then we can simply use it here as an option. So the advantage is no need for iteration, no need for any true-false condition, no way we can have endless loop. In this case, that's impossible to have endless loop, because the number of the elements of the array will always be fixed. So no possibility for endless loop. The disadvantage is that the sequence is strict. The sequence is strictly 1 by 1. The sequence is strictly from 0 to the last element of the array. So no way we can adjust or change the sequence, or maybe we want to go opposite direction from last element to the first element. In this case, we can only go from the first element to the last element. So that's the disadvantage. And yeah, so that's basically it about this loop. Yeah, so if you want to go through the arrays, I would say maybe this is the best approach you can use. Okay, so that is the start of loop. If you have any questions, please let me know. So then we can also do the same using while loop and then do while loop. So for while loop, we need to have additional variable. There is no way we can escape it in this case, and then say while my while variable is less than the one of the array, I will need to print the element of the array. And in fact, what can I do? I can increment, I can do post increment here. Yeah, and of course I can also add the space. Yeah, you can add the space in a separate statement. You can also add this inside the same statement. No difference. Run the program. The result is the same. So in this case we have basically one more line of code. Yeah, that's why while it's basically say not recommended for the loops through the arrays, because we have one additional line of code, but in fact the logic works the same way. Yeah, and in this case, as you remember, we have two options. We can use postfix increment and prefix increment, and in this case the question to you is, will this code work correctly if we have this if we change this postfix increment to prefix increment? So the question to you is, will this code work correctly? If not, then why? Can you please explain this, if you know? Just based on what we talked about, postfix and prefixing. Actually, yeah, this is actually, say, the most significant example when we change value. Anastasia, where do we change the value here? We don't make any changes on the value here, as you can see. Yeah, I mean, the question is not the program will work, it will work, but will it work correctly? So basically there will be one difference comparing to the previous code. So can you just maybe spot this difference? What will be different from one small difference from the previous code? If we use prefix increment. Any guesses? That can be a little bit of time. Code will be correct. I mean, from the compilation point of view, it will work. But there will be one difference comparing to postfix increment. So that is what was the main difference between postfix and prefix. Increment. Let's try and see. What's the result? Oh, no, yeah, actually there will be the exception, that's correct, but yeah, so it will give an error. Yeah, I forgot about this last thing. Yeah, that will give the error, that's fine, because of the last element. So basically it will try to shift this array on the right side. Yeah, so again, the first thing is that the first element is skipped. Yeah, so the element 0 will never be checked. That's first thing. But yeah, second thing, you also, and the code will actually work. I mean, it will be executed. But first you will miss the first element, and secondly, at the last position, it will increment the variable before it actually is passed to the array. So basically, yeah, the thing is that if we use prefix increment, then it firstly increments this variable, and then it basically is used as the index for this array. Yeah, so in this case, if we normally start at 0, so in this case we have this one, we have to check 0 is less than 6. That's true. We go inside, so write method is called, and we pass the so yeah, here we have the array, and we pass the variable, and we increment this variable, so it is 1, it's not 0 anymore, and only after that it is actually passed to this method. Yeah, that's why the first element is skipped, and at the last iteration, what do we have? We have 5. Is 5 less than 6? That's true. 5 is less than 6. We are here, but now it is incremented. So 5 is incremented. It means that now the variable is 6. It's not 5 anymore, and we try to access the element number 6 in the array, which is actually the 7th element, but we have only 6 elements, so it means that there's no such element here. It will trigger the exception index out of range exception, so it means that you try to access the element which is not there, and this will give the exception. That's correct. And yeah, so that is incorrect in this case, and that is correct, because if we have postfix increment, it means that it firstly access the array, firstly this variable is used, and only after that it is incremented. Yeah, it is not used before it is incremented. So that's the difference. And yeah, so that is how we can write this code. Using the while loop. So the question to you is, so you can see the question, which loop type is the best for this assignment? So how do you think? Here, what do you think is the best one from your point of view, the most effective? Yeah, so in these cases we can also write something like this. Yeah, so that would be the same. There's no difference if we use this right one. We can also skip using this and write the same way as here. That's up to you. For each, because that's the shortest, yeah, I would say that for each is the best if we want to go through the elements of the array. But that would be more classical point of view. Yeah, Anastasia, that's also correct, because in some cases you may need to use this I variable, because sometimes it is needed for some needs. Maybe we'll face such situations in future. So sometimes this I variable is needed. So basically in this case we don't have this I variable. So if we again if we want to print the elements the opposite direction, then of course for each, then what be the best one, and then we'll need to write the logic here, adjust it, then we can print the code. And the while, yeah, for arrays we rarely use while loop, but while loop is widely used for the collections. We can talk about the collections. You'll see that while loop there is is quite popular. So, and one thing what we can do in addition, let's maybe then as we said, let's use maybe for each approach here. And what I want to do is this may be a little bit complicated from the first point of view, but let's say that we want to create the array based on what the user, based on the input from the user. Yeah. So in this case, previously we had to provide the number of the elements before we actually start filling the array. In this case, let's maybe do it in the way that user should not provide the number of the elements. The user can simply continue adding the values. So let's do it, and then we can use while loop. And again, I will use endless loop. In this case, just maybe for you to not be scary to use endless loop, because in practice that's quite a popular thing to be used also on the programming language when I mostly programmed until some time was ABAP, Advanced Business Application Programming, and there is such type of loop called do loop, which looks like this. So that means do, and by default, and that is actually the most popular type of loop in Advanced Business Application Programming. That's the language from SAP. And in fact, this loop itself by default is endless loop. Do and do. So just for your information, because it's not be scary. In some languages, endless loop is by default. Actually, that was the only loop which can be executed in such way. So for you to not be scared. Okay, so we have while loop, and then we can ask user to enter the element of the array. So let's say that this is integer element. So here we can ask user to enter the element. So here we can declare the variable. So let's say that this is the element. So let's say that this is the element input, and I can ask user to. I already asked it, so now I can parse it and check. Then I say if in this case I'll simply do it the following way. If let's say until the user enters incorrect value, then the cycle will be stopped. Okay, so then we can go to integer. Let's say try parse. Then we ask user to provide the input, and then I will pass this element input, of course, as the element parameter. So if it is not true, then we actually exit the loop, which would be fine. Okay, then else we actually then we should, there are different options how we can proceed. Firstly, let's create dynamic arrays. So what does it mean? It means that let's see. So first of all, let's declare the array. Since we'll use it after that, I will declare it here. And this will be integer my array. So just initialized array. Okay. So then one more thing we can do, just to introduce you a little bit with them. We can use no. We'll later on talk about what it is, but first of all, then let's do it this way, and then yeah, so in case we know that the input is correct, so the user provided the valid element of the array, so that should be integer. We can do the following thing. We need to initialize new array. Yeah, and there's one more thing. There's one more thing that will be elements of the array. So that would be number elements. That would be shorter. And here what we can do, we can declare new array, and this would be number of the elements plus plus. So then this is done, and then we can there is one more thing. For the arrays, we have this method clone, and this method copy. We have method clone, and we have actually method copy too. In this case, that may be a little bit tricky for you, but maybe just for you to see that the arrays are not as simple structure as you may know before. So here we have it, and here we need to add one more variable. So be copy array, and in this case that would be another array. So what do we want to achieve? We want to make the logic in the way that the user does not provide how many elements he or she will enter. Yeah, so in this case we will endlessly ask user to provide the elements until it provides us the integers. Once the user does not provide us the integers, then the array will be actually formed, and then we will work with this array. And in this case, I want to show you how can we actually dynamically create the arrays, where we actually to add one more element to the array. How can we do it? So this is what I'm trying to show you here, and to actually say that that's from technical point of view, that's not as easy. So here we will copy the array, then we'll create the new array, and then we will actually say that copy array, my array equals, then copy array, say copy 2, here I need to copy 2, and I need to provide the elements. So then this would be my array, and the index of this would be 0. So, and then I will add the number of the elements -1, because we need to add the last element, and this will be element input. That's the last element. So let's then check how does it works. I'm not really sure if I haven't missed anything, but let's try. Okay, we have the error. It is okay, it's not initialized. We need to initialize it, and yeah, of course that should be 0 by default. That's true. And okay, my array. Sorry, we have my error. Okay, let's change it to my array. Okay, just typo. Let's check now. Okay, so let's say that we enter the first element okay, so we have the handled exception. On handled exception at line 27. Oh, okay, yeah, I got it. I got that because here we have one more thing we need to check. If my array is not null, then we can add it. Otherwise we can say that. Oh, hold on. And so yeah. So this otherwise we have nothing to copy. As we have nothing to copy, so it means that the array is empty. Yeah, null means that it is not initialized, it is empty, and it cannot be used. So in this case, it means that we need to simply initialize the array. So in case else, this would be the we can use number of the elements. That would be the same. So, or we can simply start with 1, because at first iteration this will always be 0 plus 1. This would be 1. Okay, so let's run it. Let's try to enter the elements. Okay, we have one more exception, line 33, and hold on. So why do we have this array out of bound? Because so here this first one, and then it should be 0. Okay, so that should be correct too. Oh yeah, I'm not sure why it is. Why this exception? It should not be. Because the bounds of the array is yeah, number of the elements minus 1. So that should be correct. Okay, then maybe in this case, let's create the following way. And here we can simply then say that it should be like this. No, hold on. We need it. That is interesting. Okay, then maybe let's have 10 minutes breakout and quickly check what's the issue here, and then we will continue. Okay? Just because we need to quickly check it. Okay, yeah, so let's continue, and yeah, so that was quite funny that the issue was the same we were talking about. Yeah, so what was we just talked about? So if we do prefix increment, then of course it will be firstly incremented, then applied to this array initialization. So in this case we should use prefix increment, because here we need to provide the number of the elements to be used for our new array. So let's check what happens now. .NET Run, let's enter the value for the element. Say we have this. Let's enter something which is not correct. In this case, all the elements are printed. So yeah, that's the way how actually create the dynamic arrays. So let's take a closer look on this. So first of all, what happens here? First I need to declare the variable. The variable my array, because I will use it after that to print the elements. I can skip using the brackets, that's up to you, because again if we have one statement, then we can skip using the brackets. Yeah, so that's why here I must declare it. In fact, I can do them this way, but here I will have the problem because I have a check on null, and that's why I must initialize it. So basically, what null means. So this will be the part of object-oriented programming. Now we have the topic about the arrays, then later on we'll have a topic about strings, and then we'll finally come to the object-oriented programming. So, but in fact, you'll see that the arrays and strings, they are all actually the objects. Yeah. So, since they all are the objects, then the initial value for the objects is null. Null means that this is just empty space, empty null object. And that's also the value, and the value I can use as the empty value. So then I go to the loop, so there is nothing special here. At this point we all know how these things work. But then yeah, what happens here? Here I ask user to enter the element, then the user can enter it here. So if the user enters the right element, then I have a look. I take a look here. So first of all, I check if the if the array is not what it means. It means that it is not the first element we add. Just simply add. Yeah, but just in general, what we talk about here, that's not that's maybe a little bit complicated for you, and that's fine. That's not what we should mandatory do. That's just additional content what you can think about in scope of the arrays. In this case, yeah. So for this logic, yeah, we can add. But basically, what happens here? Here we actually every time we create the new array. Yeah, so every time to actually add more elements to the array, we need to create the new array with the higher number of the elements we can add there. Yeah, so in this case, we must create new array. So it's not possible to. So in this case, not equals null means that this variable is already initialized. Means that in this case, this is the previous array. But since we want to add the new element, we cannot use this array anymore. We need to have the array which has the same number of elements plus 1, yeah, just to be able to add new element. And that's why we need to create the new array, and this is what we do here. And here you can see we increment it. It means that number of the elements will be the same as before plus 1. So it means that we create new array with let's say incremented number of the elements. Yeah. So in this case, we create new array. Basically, what we do, we simply copy all the previous elements from the array to the new array. Yeah, so this one is the new array now. This one is the old array we keep here, and we copy all the elements from this array to this array. That means that it will copy all the elements from the previous array, and now it will have one more element, one more slot, one last element we can actually then enter from here. Yeah. So that's for the case when that's not the first element. If we create the array, for the first time, like in this case, okay, so here we have check, means that my array is not null, means that it is already initialized at some point, and then means that we need to copy this array. If it is null, like in this case, it means that there's nothing to copy. We are in the first iteration, and we simply call the first. So we are here for the first time. No array to copy. Initialize array with one element. Yeah, so please remember the syntax for the arrays. To initialize them, we create new, so we call the operator new. We provide the type, and inside the square brackets we provide the number of the elements to be used for the array we create. Like in this case, that would be the number of the elements, which is incremented at each iteration, because that's obviously every time we add the element from console, so we also add the number of the elements in the array. Yeah, that's why we have this number of elements, which is incremented during each loop, and it helps us to know the dimensions of the arrays. Yeah, so in this case, simply means that we are first time here. We create new array with one element only, and at the end we add the element from input to the last position of the array. Why we use -1? Because we know that we start at 0. So it means that if we have 5 elements in the array, for example, then the last element will be indexed at 4th position. Okay. So the same here, we have number elements in the array, but to access the last one, we need to decrement it to not decrement, but actually subtract 1 from it, and then we'll access the last element then. Yeah. So that is about it. And yeah, actually this approach I wanted to show you, to actually show that the arrays are immutable. So arrays are immutable. In fact, so yeah, that is yeah. So we cannot really add. Otherwise, we will need to add the new. Yeah. Otherwise, we'll need to just simply create a new array. Then we cannot really change the dimensions of the array. Yeah. So that is And that is about it. Yeah, but in fact, on practice, what you will see, we will not do it. Normally we don't do it, but what we do, we use the collections. So we will talk about the data structures. So let me just open the structure of the course, just for you to inform. So at this point, just basically for you to see that the arrays have the significant disadvantage, and its disadvantage is that we need to write such code to add the new element at the end. So, but according to our course, we have the data structures here. Oh, yeah. So we have the data structures here. Oh yeah, we have data collections here. So we have data structures and collections. So here we will talk about the collections, and you will see that all the lists. Yeah, we can use the lists. We can use the sets to actually make such implementation without writing so many code here, which may look a bit, say, maybe not tricky, but just better to. It's always better to use one line of code, right? So that's why collections are more preferable in case we want to deal with something like this. But yeah, that's the case for future. Okay, so do you have any questions? Okay, so if no questions, then maybe let me shortly explain so the home task from this practical assignment would be the assignment 2 and assignment 3. So for assignment 2, you will need to again create the array, just print some elements. So in addition, as the bonus, what you can do, apply the approaches we checked. Oh, did I just post the Visual Studio Code, right? Okay, let me reopen it. Yeah, you can also apply the approaches what we used before here. So don't forget about the approach of trying parse, of course. So just in case, you can add the option. So if it says that you need to create the array, you can also then create the option for the user to write this from console. So I know how to do it. But yeah, for the array, well, maybe for the array, let's see, but that's also up to you. You can maybe copy paste also this part of code. Let's maybe also just maybe right now. So if you want to take a look on the code, you can do it on GitHub. So you can find the push code from here. Push origin master. Yeah, so just as the bonus, you can use as many approaches as you know, as you can do. So that is always nice. I mean, again, also to check on the code, you can use again while loop to handle incorrect input. So in case user tries to enter the value, but the value do not match the requirements, like if it's integer but we passed something else, then we can use while to ask user to enter the code again, or not the code, to enter the input again, the value again. So that's used as the option. Okay, yeah. Question from Alwin, a reminder about the concept of try parse. Try parse, that's the method That's the method from the class integer33. In theory, we can also do it this way. This would be also correct, but I guess, yeah, that would be also correct, but we use int33 because that looks better. That looks better, and yeah, that's mostly just because it looks better, because this is the class. Yeah, so that's the method from the class int32. That's the class which comes from the system, so it means available for everyone at every part of code. Then we have the methods try_parse. Try_parse accepts two variables. Yeah, so again, when we write a function, then we can add multiple parameters. For example, like in this case, we had first parameter, second parameter, third parameter. We can add as many parameters as we want. So in this case, try_parse function accepts two parameters. The first parameter is simple parameter without any additions like ref or out. So just simple parameter which asks us to. So yeah, you can place your cursor to try_parse and you can see what it says. It says that it accepts string and it accepts the integer as the output parameter. So the first one is string. That's the input parameter. So that's the actual string which will be checked and will be parsed. So this method actually parses the string provided here as the first parameter to the integer variable provided here as the output parameter. So it means that this is the returning parameter. Yeah. So the parsing again happens from string we provide here. Then it takes the string. From string we can get the integer, and then the integer will be written here and simply returned as the just as the integer value. It will be here, taken from here. And in addition, it returns the answer. And the question is the parsing correct or not? If it returns true, then the parsing is correct. If it returns false, then the parsing is correct. So yeah, this method returns true or false. If true, parsing is correct. If false, then parsing is not correct. What does it mean? It means that here we provide not integer but something else. Yeah, for example, we provide a string, or we provide double, or just any format which cannot be accepted as the string. In this case, try_parse method returns false. But if the parsing is successful, then the method returns true. Yeah, it returns true, and in addition, the value from this string, integer value, is parsed and then written to this variable. So that's the idea of try_parse. And the difference is that simply parse method, it does not return you the answer. Let's say does not check if the parsing is successful or not. So that's the difference. Parse does not return you if the parsing is true or false, if the parse is correct or not. In this case, it will trigger you the exception. I guess the exception name was parsing exception. So in this case, if the parsing is incorrect, you'll get true or false result here. In this case, if the parsing is incorrect, then you'll get the exception. On practice, there is no difference to use true or false, to check by true or false. On practice, you can also use try_catch to check the exceptions. And later on, when we talk about the exceptions, you'll see that we can also apply the same approach for parse method. But since right now we have not talked about the exceptions, then for us this is the only approach we can use. For exceptions, again, we can if you know how to handle the exceptions, you can use try catch and then handle the exceptions and then use it the same way as try parse. Or again, you can use try parse. This returns true or false and says that, again, in case of false, it says that the parsing is incorrect. The value cannot be parsed to integer. But in this case, it simply triggers the exception. So that's the difference. So yeah, for the home task, then again, you can apply any approaches any approaches what we've gone through. Also, if something new from your side, something what we have not covered during the sessions, then you can also introduce it to your home tasks. That would be great. So that's about this one. We can also compute the average. So we can check the elements. So basically we need to go through all the elements. In this case, then do some operations on them. And also, do again calculations. So in this case, you will need to do multiple calculations. You will need to firstly calculate the average value using all the elements. Then you will need to again go through all the elements and then calculate, and then check if the element is less than the average value. So then for the next task, to task number 3, that also need to create a byte. And what is this? Let me double check. Okay, that's the correct one. Because in Java course I actually had the same practical tasks. Yeah. So so in this case, that's so here you need to again create the array, then go through the array, do some calculations, and then print out the results. So that would be the next task, and let me so then you need to do the assignment number 2 and assignment number 3. The assignment 2 and 3. So, and the deadline 3. So the next task is until the 2nd of August. So let it be. Just so we need to a little bit speed up a little bit on the home task. So that let it be the 7th. Before the weekend. So that would be. So I can check on the weekend. So that would be the 7th of August. So I can check during the weekend. Okay. So I guess that should be fine. Do you have any questions? I need to submit the same way. Just push changes to your remote repository, GitHub. So okay. Then we have 15 more minutes. Regarding the next topic. So again, I maybe wanted to firstly then start with the algorithms, because this is a little bit theory, but from my point of view, this is quite interesting theory. And in fact, that's the theory mostly for the data scientists, but also for those who are the programmers. Then the algorithms, the metrics, can also be really important thing. And maybe I can. So yeah, I will maybe not start this presentation today. I will then maybe tell a short story about from my experience to provide the motivation to you. So maybe let me share this presentation. I guess I formatted it well. So let me double check before I share it with you. And then we will talk about this presentation during the next session. So let me maybe share it with you under the notes and resources. So it should be here. And then we will cover it next time. But before we finish today's session, I want to should we talk a short motivation why such algorithms, and basically the topic from this algorithms part 2 may be quite important, mostly from the understanding point of view for the programmers to actually why it may be quite important for the understanding point of view for the programmers to know such concepts, or at least to have some knowledge from the concepts. So from my experience, basically my experience in IT and my experience of programming in general started during the studies. I studied mathematics and statistics, and during the first course there were two programming courses: the introduction into programming, and since that was the course to the mostly as course to the mathematicians, then there were actually lots of algorithms we had to develop, think about, also to draw some fractals, for example. There were some tasks to compute some solutions based on the mathematical formulas and so on. And so basically that was the time I actually started programming. And so also in this case we can quite take a look on such thing that lots of things from the theory point of view of the programming are quite closely related to some topics but some topics from math, from the mathematics, and maybe less from the statistics. So, and when I started programming, so during my work, when I started working in IT, after that, I had to write some programs, and most of the programs I wrote were related to some working with the data where the tables are used. Basically, from our point of view, we can say that these are the collections or also the arrays. What does it mean? It means that we have some tables. So let's say that we have data. We want to process, we want to work on, we want to read something from the data, we want to do some calculations, we want to do actually some logic on the data. And since I worked on the actual CRM, means customer relationship management system, there were lots of data from the customers, from the users, and on practice it means that we should develop the algorithms which are efficient, because otherwise if we just simply write whatever we want, then as a result the algorithms practice are not efficient, and then we should apply our knowledge about them. We had to apply it, and we actually, even right now, we should apply our knowledge. So in my case, I should apply my knowledge to build the algorithms which are actually efficient, especially when we work with, let's say, big data, but the large, huge data. So it means that data about the user, so there can be tens or thousands, mostly thousands, of the users, so the thousands of the entries. So it means that we work with the collections, with the arrays which has, let's say, collections, database tables where there are thousands of entries. And again, when we want to read something, when we want to go through, when we want to create the loops, in this case we should also think about the efficiency of the algorithms we build. And from such point of view, actually it's the theory from math and computer science, it helps, and the theory about the algorithms, it helps us significantly, because in this case we can really understand at what case we need to apply this or this algorithm. And what I mean, for example, if we talk about the sorting, you'll see that for the sorting algorithms, basically there are multiple different sorting algorithms. And actually the question from you may be which algorithm is the best one, the fastest one, because we mostly should think about what is the fastest one, what algorithm will sort us the data as fast as possible. But on practice, there is no actual such one unique algorithm. Why? Just simply because the data is different. What does it mean? It means that we have just imagine, you have the box. The box was, for example, the toys. So again, for example, for your children or for you as for child. Remember your childhood. You have the box of the toys you want to play with. And let's imagine that you as the child, as a kid, you want to select. You think you want to play with one exact toy, and you have the box of all these toys, and you need to search for this toy. So what can happen there? So there is a possibility that you have, let's say, hundreds of toys, and then you need to search through all these hundred of toys to find one exact toy you're looking for. Then you can have only one toy inside this box, which is the toy you're looking for. Then what else can happen? You can have again hundreds of toys, but on the top of this box you already see the toy you want to play with. Or in the worst case, it may be that you have again hundreds of toys, but your toy you're looking for is located somewhere at the bottom of this box, so you need to go through all the possible toys to actually search for one exact toy you're looking for. Same as in programming. So if, for example, if you want to apply the read on the table, for example, then there may be different cases. There may be lucky cases for us. Then so we apply the algorithm which jumps to the entry we are looking for from the first try, and then in the worst case, maybe that we apply the algorithm which jumps to the item also only at the last try. So we need to go through all the elements of the table to finally jump at the right position. So in this case, we are not sure if we are lucky or not with the algorithm we selected. And there may be different algorithms. So again, if we go back to the toys, so let's say that our toys are, again, if we talk about the box, that maybe this is not so possible, but let's imagine that your toys are sorted in some way. So you know that on the top you have the let's say teddy bears, then somewhere deeper you have some other toys, and then you have some other toys. So in this case you have the groups of your toys in your box, so they are grouped in some way. So if you have this grouping, so it makes the search easier, because you won't search inside the group where you know that this your toy will not be placed in, right? So I mean the toy you're looking for. So in this case, same as with data. It's easy. Let's imagine that you have the sequence, not sequence, but just 10 entries in the table. Yeah. Again, for the database table, I guess, hope you understand what the table means. It means that you have the data. Data was, let's say again, in normal case, that would be hundreds or thousands of entries. Let's say we have just to make it easier, 100 entries, and then. So let's say that these are the entries of the names and surnames. So let's say there are 100 students or maybe 100 people, and you search for one exact. So what's the list? Yeah, the list of 100 people, and let's say that you search for the for one exact person in this list. So what may be here? So you can search, and in the worst case, this would be somewhere at the end. In the best case, this can be somewhere on the top, if the list is sorted randomly. But let's say that the list is sorted. Let's say the list is sorted alphabetically. So in this case, if you are looking for one exact person and the list is sorted alphabetically, then it's again, you understand that it's easier for you to search for the entry, for the row you are looking for, right? If the list is sorted. So that is these all things are related to the data structures and to the algorithms we can apply. And then during the next session, we will take a closer look what kind of the algorithms we can apply. So in the average case, we will mostly talk about average case again, because our data can be different. We can be lucky that our data is as good as it will provide the best results for all our algorithms, or the data can be unsorted in the total chaotic way, and in this case the operations, search operations, for example, may take more time, more steps for our program than if the list, if the data is more clear, it's sorted, and so on. But yeah, so that was the short introduction of the motivation why we need to talk about the algorithms, and just for you to take and for you to point to some points that the data can be different, characteristics of the data can be different, and that the algorithms can produce different results. And again, during the next session, we will talk about some key points of the algorithms. So this will be more theoretical session, but at least for me, and actually my current director of the company I'm working in, so he was actually the guy who gave me, let's say, a little bit of lectures on this topic. Yeah, so that was quite interesting for me, and that actually also helped me to understand the data better. So yeah, I hope that for you this will also be interesting, and you can take some knowledge. So then next time we will take a look on it. So, but for now, thank you very much for your attention, and see you then all on Wednesday. So have a nice evening, have a nice tomorrow, and then meet you all on Wednesday. Bye.